I'm Carrie Sassu, by the way. I'm the Director of Strategic Initiatives at the Center. If you've been in two of the other sessions wherein I've served as the moderator, I'm sorry that you're seeing my face and hearing my voice again, but here we are. So I also want to thank Eileen and Kim, who are both on here and who have put in a great deal of work to make this conference come to fruition. So this afternoon's panel, we're fortunate to have representatives from the Connecticut Parent Advocacy Center, or CPAC, which is a statewide nonprofit organization that offers information and support to families of children with any disability or chronic illness. From ages birth through 26. And their center is committed to the idea that parents can be the most effective advocates for children, given the confidence and that knowledge and understanding of special education law and its procedures can bring. So Laura Knapp is going to serve as the moderator for this panel. We also have a self-advocate on here, Yana, who was speaking before. But I'm gonna ask you, Laura, to just start the session. I was going to remind people to please keep themselves on mute. If you have questions, please type them in the chat. We will be monitoring the chat during the session, and there will be some time for question and answer at the end. Again, it's being recorded. You can opt to keep your video on or off during this session. All right, with that, Laura, I'm gonna allow you to introduce the members of your panel or allow them to introduce themselves if you choose. Thanks so much.
Well, thank you very much. And my name is Laura Knapp, and I am one of the parent consultants at CPAC. So welcome, everybody. And the panelists are here to share with you what has worked with the transition to adulthood. So that being said, I am going to call on Lynn Rule. Lynn, can you tell me or tell the audience what has worked well to prepare your child for transition while in high school, after high school, becoming more independent, and what supports and services do they currently receive? And please introduce yourself as well.
Hi. So, thank you, Laura. Thank you so much for having us here. It really is a pleasure to be able to have an opportunity to talk with all of you. So my name is Lynn Rule. I am a parent of a 22-year-old who is exiting the transition program that he's been in for the last, I guess, 4 years, although we kind of think about last year as sort of being a bit of a waste. There were some challenges along the way, but he certainly has been thriving in his program, and he's looking forward to moving on to the next steps. So what worked well for us in high school, I have been an involved parent with I have 3 children, and John is my middle son. And I've always been involved in public education ever since my oldest started kindergarten. So I was really familiar with the class offerings that were at the high school. And when he was moving into high school, I really did not want this to be a time where we were just focusing solely on all of these academic goals and objectives. We wanted to start looking at what he was going to do beyond high school. So we started thinking about what he wanted to do when he grew up. And originally he said he wanted to be a rock and roll star. And while I would have loved to have had a Steven Tyler in the family, the reality was that was probably not going to happen. And so the team originally was saying, okay, well, maybe we can get him an internship at a music store. And I thought, but how's that going to serve him when he finishes with transition and he's going into real world and not going to be head of a major rock band and selling out Madison Square Garden? So instead, I suggested maybe we look at an introduction to guitar. He had never picked one up, didn't know how to play it. It was also an opportunity for us to incorporate some of the other goals and objectives that were in his IEP. So he took that class. While he loved it, he also realized that probably was not something that was going to be profitable for him as he grew up. So instead we looked at some gym classes because he wanted to maybe be a gym teacher. And he took gym every single semester while he was in school. He was able to also still work on his goals and objectives, working on team sports, understanding how he has to be part of a team environment. It's not just only about what he wants to do. He worked on weightlifting, so he was becoming more aware of his body. Another thing that we did was Introduction to Foods, which was a class that filled his art requirement. And it also gave us a great opportunity to push in speech during that time. So he could, well, you know, think about what better way to work on multi-step directions than following a recipe. You're working on math skills, you're working on reading for comprehension, you're working on time when you're looking at how long something has to cook. So these were all things that we did while he was in high school, and it helped to make him feel more confident, and that helped him also to feel more independent. He wanted to do more things on his own as he spent more time with gen ed peers. And so I think that the movement into his transition program gave him more of a confidence. He went to his job sites by himself. He did not want to have anyone with him. He wanted to be able to do this on his own. And I think looking back, that was probably the most important lesson that he could have learned during that time. Are you trying to unmute, Laura?
Yes, there you go. Thank you. My computer's lagging, so thank you. Well, thank you, Lynn. Next, I'm going to call on Keo. And Keo, please introduce yourself and the age of your children, and just share what has worked well with your children as far as the transition to adulthood, while in high school, after high school, becoming more independent, and what supports and services are in place now. Thank you.
Thank you, Laura. So my name is Keo, and I do work with the Connecticut Parent Advocacy Center. I currently have a son that is in a transition. However, I guess due to COVID, he wasn't able to start the program because they reduced the size that they were allowing due to capacity. But what I will say, communication, making sure that I'm listening to my son, what he would like to do, because I have a plan, but he also has things of interest. And I think it's really important to make sure that he's at the table, that he's part of the conversation. Because the programs that we were looking at due to capacity he wasn't able to get into, his mind has shifted. So he started working, and now he's enjoying that. However, he hasn't been able to keep a job for long periods of time. So that's kind of concerning for me. I kind of knew that that was gonna happen. But actually yesterday I did have a meeting with the supervisor of special ed, and we were talking, and we're trying to see if we can encourage him to try one of the programs out. And they came to the house yesterday and met with him as well. So I really think, especially because our PPT was done in the spring last year, for parents to follow up. So if there's a program that you were thinking your child's gonna go to the following year, make sure that you're not just relying on the school. His records weren't sent on time, so that also impacted his ability to be able to start with the kids that they did start the program with, and they don't take kids mid-year. So we wouldn't be able then to start next following year. But then what is plan B? So that was part of our conversation, always thinking, well, if this doesn't work, what else is there available? And having buy-in, right? Because a lot of times we think we know better, but our kids may have a different plan. And I've sat at PPTs with families who have, you know, children of transition age, and it's really uncomfortable to see the back and forth between the parent and the child. And I also experience it with my son. So trying to ahead of time come up with a plan, and knowing that he has options, I think that's always been important. And that's something that yesterday kept coming up, because he was like, you're pushing me. And I'm like, no, I just want you to know that this is available. And then when the woman was talking to him, he's like, oh, I didn't know that that was possible. And that's what I wanted him to hear. But it was one thing me saying it, it's another thing the woman from the program. And then he actually used the word unprofessional in regards to the whole setup. But she was able to explain to him that it wasn't like him being the only kid that didn't start. Because of COVID, they weren't taking any new kids. So technically this whole time, he really didn't miss out on the program, because he's feeling like other kids started and not him in this other program we're looking at. So that was a new revelation for him. But had he not participated in the meeting, it would have still kept coming from me. And when he heard her say the same thing I said before, he received it differently. And I appreciated that she took the time to explain that, because I think he needed that. He needed reassurance. So we signed paperwork yesterday, and hopefully, you know, they'll give us a start date soon. But I would encourage having the child at the table, trying to listen to what they would like, exploring options, thinking always of plan B and plan C, because you just don't know, especially because of the COVID restrictions, like we're still dealing with that. And also communication, you know, between the parent, the district, the school, the program, if it's a program outside of the district, and not just relying on someone to get back to you, but getting contact information. You know, if you're able to visit, make sure you get a chance to visit, because it's real different having a conversation over the phone and being able to go in person. So thank you.
Thank you, Keo. So our next presenter, Yana, is a self-advocate. So Yana, can you introduce yourself and share what has worked well for you to prepare for transition in high school, after high school, especially becoming more independent, and what services do you have now?
Right, so sorry I'm not using my video. It's just very distracting to me if I keep looking at myself. I graduated high school in 2005, a long time ago, and I didn't have the supports that kids have today, like the transitional programs. I was just left on my own, basically. We had a PPT where we talked about college. Basically, that was the only option given to me because I don't have an intellectual disability. So they didn't ever give me the option of staying in high school. Yeah, so I was basically on my own. I started with BRS as a junior in high school, and it really didn't do much for me. And it was basically just me learning my way and learning through a lot of time experience what to do, what not to do, how to speak up for myself. Because when you go to college, it's a whole new world. It's a lot of self-advocacy. There's no one there to hold your hand, make sure you do your homework. If you want accommodations at the Student Disability Services, you have to be the one to approach them to get the accommodations, and then make sure that your professors are following the accommodations that you need. That's a lot of work, and at first it was really hard, and at first I bombed out, but when I got my footing, it was pretty good. I will say the community college is a great option. It's smaller, it's affordable, they have great disability services, and you don't have to pay extra for. There are private colleges for kids with disabilities, but it's a lot of money when you could be going to community college and saving that money. And plus, with community college, you can transfer to any of the state universities, which is what I did. I transferred over to Central and I got a bachelor's in history. And now I'm looking at graduate school, and Southern is on my list. And I want to become a counselor, licensed practical counselor, and work with girls and young women on the spectrum. But yeah, it was a lot of trial and error, a lot of advocacy, a lot of me and my parents calling BRS, it was DDS back then. I got services through DDS's autism division. Of course, now we're at DSS. Like they moved us over. But I started with them when I was about 19, I think. And they helped me a lot. They have given me the support I needed to graduate college. And just last year, I moved out on my own. I had my own place, and they gave me that support. There's still a lot that we need here in Connecticut in terms of support. Our wait list for autism services is over 10,000 individuals, which is not acceptable. And so, yeah, it's a very long wait list. So I would say if you want to get your child into autism services, apply as early as possible. Because maybe now they'd be at the bottom of the list, but by the time they graduate, maybe there'll be a spot. But we need more in the state, especially for people with autism who don't have an intellectual disability. Because I work at DDS, and I can see the difference in the service they provide, and it's just shocking. There's so much more to offer, and it's not really fair to us because just because quote unquote call us high functioning, I hate that term because it's wrong. It's not a compliment. It just means that I learned how to mask very well and I can present as neurotypical. But we still have trouble with very basic skills, like doing laundry and hygiene and keeping the house clean, those basic skills. And that needs to be started early, those basic skills training. My mom started me very early, started me volunteering. My mom gave me a lot of freedom. She let me start taking the city bus when I was in high school. And when I was in my 20s, she let me go to New York City by myself in the evening with the subway. And then I had to take the subway from Radio City Music Hall over to Brooklyn to my cousin's house for the night. And she was scared, but she let me do it because she knew that I was capable. which is great. So parents, please let your children have freedom, dignity of risk. What I see a lot when I talk to parents is they're scared and they overprotect their children. They coddle, and then these kids go out in the real world and they have no idea what to do. So it's those skills that need to be pounded, like Temple Grandin says, it needs to be pounded into you. Like manners, how to work at a job site, how to cook, how to clean, like classes like foods. I also took foods in high school, foods 1 and foods 2, and it was probably the most useful class I took in high school because I learned how to cook, and it's a skill that I took with me. Another useful class that I took is keyboarding, which is basically it's typing. It's something that I highly recommend if you have a child that's going to go on to college. Keyboarding is important because you have to write a lot of long papers in college, and knowing how to type fast because it makes a really big difference. So it's building those skills basically, and letting your child fail as hard as that is. I wouldn't have learned as much as I did if my mom didn't let me fail, didn't let me see the consequences. When I was in my 20s, I was kind of a brat. I thought I knew better than everybody else. I thought, I'm so smart, I'm so high functioning, why should I listen to job coaches? Yeah, it was hard. And my mom let me fail and learn from my behaviors. I had to learn that if you don't listen to your job coach, or if you back chat, you won't get the job, or BRS will close your case. And I had to learn that the hard way. Even though we want to protect our kids, they have to learn the things the hard way sometimes. And I'm not saying let them walk into traffic or anything, but just let go. It's like the parents here, it's like, fly, little birdie. Wait a minute, let me clip your wings. It's the analysis. Just let your kids learn. Things like public transportation, it's very important because you don't want to be driving them around all the time. Things like driver's education. There's more and more options out there to teach kids on the autism spectrum how to drive a car. But the public transportation thing is important because without that, I wouldn't have been able to get to work, to school. And my mom let me start using the bus in high school. And she said that you're capable. Then we on the bus. I was in a club in high school, the Connecticut Forum, and I was on their leadership network, and they had meetings in their office in downtown Hartford. And my mom said, I don't want to deal with the traffic. I'm going to drop you off. So take the bus. I was scared the first couple of times, but I did it. I learned where the bus stop was, and when the next one, where to get off, and that's it. And then eventually I learned how to do transfers. It's important, but even something small like going to the mall by yourself, it can mean a lot if you don't have to ask for a ride and stuff like that. It's building those important life skills that helped me a lot. And the community college system and having the supports from DSS, the autism division, it was thanks to them that I was able to graduate in the first place because it was one of my team members that suggested that we try Capital Community College for math because I have a very bad math learning disability and I wasn't succeeding at Tunxus. But Capital has very good supports from people with math disabilities, and I was able to barely pass the class that I needed. And I was able to pass college level math and statistics, whereas I like to call it statistics. And now I want to go back to school, even though I really don't miss the days of having to sit up till 3 a.m. working on papers and having to bug my professors about bringing the test down to the support center. And by the way, that Learning Disability Support Center should be everyone's first stop on campus because they're a wealth of information. They get great services from them. Like, for example, one of the things I got was extended time on my tests. And because I have really bad ADHD, I was able to take my tests in a room in the learning center so it would be distraction free. So I wouldn't have to deal with the classmates around, all the sensory challenges of a classroom. And it was really good. And then I got extra tutoring support at the learning center. But that was my first stop when I started at Tunxus, and then when we went to Central. first thing we did was we made an appointment at the Learning Disability Center to see what they had to offer, talk to other students. We walked around the campus. And actually, Southern was one of the schools I toured. When we started the undergrad journey, we toured Southern, and I almost went there, but then I got picked for the autism program, and it would have really been complicated if I had gone to Southern. I would have had to switch to the New Haven office and have staff in New Haven. So it would have been more difficult, but I'm glad I was able to go to Central and I was able to excel. I actually had good enough grades in my history courses, that I made it into the National History Honor Society. And yeah, I really like that, even though my mom is still not happy with my choice of majors. She thinks I should have done something more.
Wow, that's really an accomplishment. That's great.
But now I want to be a therapist, even though when I first started my undergrad journey, I actually started at Tungsten as a human services major. And somebody had said to me, "Oh, why are you wasting your time on human services? You have Asperger's syndrome. You don't have the social skills to be a good clinician." And I was dumb enough to listen in my 20s. I was dumb enough to listen. So I switched to general studies. And I wish I had known then. It was what I know now. And now I was able to meet other people on the spectrum who are clinicians and see that it is possible for me. But I still
that's a great ambition, Yana.
Office.
Thank you so much. That you have so many wise words, and that's great that you're looking to further your college career. And I don't envy being up at 3 o'clock in the morning doing papers, but such an inspiration. And thank you so much for sharing everything that you shared with us.
Maybe I'll get into Southern. You'll be stuck with me then.
Maybe. That'd be a good thing. Okay. Now I'm going to call on Jane Hampton. So Jane, can you please introduce yourself and the age of your child and share what has worked well in high school, after high school, becoming more independent, and what supports are currently in place, and what was your transition experience? Thank you.
Sure. So I'm Jane Hampton. I also work at the Connecticut Parent Advocacy Center. We're a group team, but I represent a little bit different story because my son is much older than everybody else is. He's already 31. And he is a person with both intellectual disability and autism. As Yana made that discrepancy, the difference, it's really important to recognize that people have different paths and what those paths might look like. So I wanted to share a little bit from that perspective of a person who is eligible for DDS services moving forward. So my son is that person. He receives services and is currently in a group employment setting. In that setting, they continue to build his work skills. His program offers a restaurant, a bakery, a greenhouse. They have a landscape crew and a cleaning crew that go into the community. So it's very diverse opportunities, and that really works for him. Because he does have autism and not just intellectual disability, he looks a little different than some of the peers on the job site. And as a result, the team, the folks that work there really work to support him individually on top of what they do for the other folks, because he really does not do well with downtime. So although his primary role is in the front end of the restaurant, where he seats people, gives menus, brings them their beverages and such, sometimes the restaurant's just not that busy. And so when that happens, they find other alternatives for him. He might go on the delivery of the pies in the community. He may go in the office and file papers, but they know that he needs to be engaged, and they make that happen for him. So my message there was, when I went looking for adult services program, they are not all the same. They do not all offer the same things, and I had to find something that was just the right fit for him. And I think that that's not different for people who don't have an intellectual disability. Finding that right fit is really the key for somebody's happiness in life. And so because I found out about transition planning and special education when my son was only 9, I talked to the school right then and there and said, let's put things in place now, because he's a guy that really needs to learn what responsibility means, and that the world comes with responsibility. And so we started infusing work into his day very early. And if any of you are parents of children that are younger, I don't think you can start too soon. And so in the elementary school, he delivered milk to the preschool, he delivered newspapers to the teacher, he checked books out of the library. And in all those times, not only was he learning skills, but people saw him as a competent person. And that was huge for his development. I understood that taking the long view was really what we needed to do to make sure that when he got to the end of the school, he would be able to be that as independent an adult as possible. I was really lucky. I had a birth to 3 provider at 18 months who scared the heck out of me by saying, our job is to make sure he'll be as independent an adult as possible. He was 18 months old, and that was not where my head was. But boy, it served me really well for many, many years. So after elementary school, middle school was not quite as supportive, but the high school then offered him 2 afternoons after school job experiences in the community. And they also provided him with a mentor who helped him learn how to set up social engagements, how to call a friend and go to the movies, how to get to a school dance, how to get to a school basketball game. And that served his social piece really well as well. So those 2 pieces helped with job and social, but in the school academic setting, he was a guy who had a para 1-to-1 his whole educational career. So now, even though he's not going to college, we still have to pull that back. He's not a 1-to-1 person in the world. And so they started fading that in different classes and really moving to peer support, where if a peer said, if he was maybe not willing to do the work in the class, somebody in the class would say, hey, I'm putting out my math notebook. Why don't you sit down and do math with me? And he would jump right in and do the work because highly motivated by the peers. So that was another thing that built independence at the high school level. But I mentioned that finding the right fit is really important. So at the end of high school, going into a transition program, we started that search of what's going to be the right fit for him. And we looked at several, and I'm learning this as I go, just as everybody is. What I realized, what both he and I realized is after looking at 3 programs, the peer group was going to be the thing that made or break it for him. And so we chose a peer group that had kids that were dynamic, social, supportive of each other, and he fit right in, and it was, again, a perfect fit. At the end of that programming, though, we started transitioning him into his adult services, and he went with a job coach 1 day a week, then 2 days a week until the end of that. When he turned 21, because that was the deal at the time, he went into that program 5 days a week. And again, I told you, he's been there 10 years, and finding the right fit of the peer group and the job coaches, that was what was the secret for him. And he's been there 10 years and is still very happy to be there.
Thank you so much. Everybody has such wonderful words of wisdom. So for our last question, what advice would you give to other parents or individuals as they're going through the different stages of the transition process? So I'm going to switch it up. Keo, I'm going to start with you first.
I'm sorry, you said what?
So what advice would you give? That's okay. That's okay. So what advice would you give to other parents or individuals as they transition through the different stages of the transition process?
I would say start early as possible. I know I kept thinking I had more time. I was encouraging the team to talk about transition early on, but it just kept being pushed back for whatever reason. And then in his junior year, it just became very real for me. And then the senior year, I was just honestly freaking out because I feel like we really didn't put a lot of work into the transition. And also take the time to explore programs. Again, if you're relying on the school to show you everything that's available, you may miss opportunities. So take the time to, talk to other families, see what else may be available outside of the school. So there's some things that the school can do, and then there's some things that I could do at home. We did work with Level Up, but they have limited services. And I just feel like the more options you explore, it's easier to then sit down and take a break and then go back to it. Because sometimes if you don't have enough options, you feel like there's nothing. And then if you have too many options, you feel like you're drowning because you just don't know what you're going to choose. But I always wanted my son to know that he was capable and there were more things for him. I know the school, for me, I felt sad about it, but he ended up being happy. So it shifted my frame of mind. Was they offered Job Corps as a next step for him. And I just kept thinking, wow, 4 years of high school, and the only thing you think that he would be good at would be for a Job Corps program. And it could have been because of his interest, which is plumbing, but I felt like, is there anything else that's available? So I felt like I went into, into mommy mode, and I started looking at other programs. Like I wanted him to know that there's a union. I wanted him to know that there was an evening program, there's Porter and Chester. So there were other options for him, not just Job Corps, because I feel like Job Corps tends to have like a bad rap. But then when I did the walking tour and he was so excited, it really shifted my mind to be like, you know what, let me give him a chance to try this out. And then a lot of times we get stuck with someone else's bad experience. So I would say, give yourself a chance to try it. And if it doesn't work, then move on to something else. But I think that explore early on as much as possible and talk to other families.
Thank you, Keo. Lynn, same question. Do you need me to repeat it?
No, it's
okay.
So I totally agree with my colleagues. Starting early is most definitely the best thing that you can do for your child. I would also encourage out-of-the-box thinking, which goes along with what Keo is saying also. You just need to try on different hats, and you have to try to look at other ways that you're going to be able to help your child to grow and to become more independent. And something that I experienced, and again, we all have different scenarios. I have 3 children, and I'm helping my gen ed students to work on life skills, right? I'm helping them to learn how to do laundry and learn how to change their bed and to take care of themselves. Well, why not do that also for my son who has special education services? It doesn't mean that he's any different. He needs to learn that too. So that was something that I did very early. Was I created a day without mom. So it was a day that I was home during the summer, but it also gave them a chance to learn how to strip their bed, do their laundry, separate clothes, make sandwiches, make breakfast. They all learned that. And so when my daughter went on to college, she did not have red laundry, or pink laundry rather, because she knew how to separate it. But my son has been doing his own laundry and taking care of himself, and he's very regimented about that. It's fine. If he's going to wash clothes on Tuesday and that's what works, then that's fine. But he also knows that if he runs out of underwear on Sunday, he's probably going to need to make a shift. So it's something that I felt was important for me as mom to teach him, and to be able to have that time at school to actually learn other things and to spend time with peers. Thank you.
I want to add, only because I heard what Lynn said about thinking outside the box. Something that I found out through my own research was that we were able to partner with Job Corps. So my son did not get a diploma. He will be able to attend Job Corps, and the district will still be involved and support him to do the work. They did have to sign an MOU to do that. So I don't know if other families are thinking about that, because a lot of times they say you have to have the diploma or you would be taking academic courses at Job Corps. In our case, it worked out that he still remains a student with an IEP and will continue to get academic support.
Thank you, Keo. And Jane, any words of advice? Do you need me to repeat the question, or? Okay.
No, I'm good. Thank you. I guess the critical factors that I think to transition is really knowing who the student is, knowing what their needs are, knowing what their interests are, and putting them at the heart of everything. It's their life, it's their future. And I think Yana said it beautifully. We as parents, we can cuddle. We really need to let our children fail. And I love that she said, but she's not suggesting to let them run into traffic. I think, failing at a certain level, my son was in his transition program, we agreed to have him get fired so that he could understand that, like some people are like, you let them fire your son? Of course I did. He wasn't doing his job. How else was he going to learn? And even the people at the pharmacy were like, oh, you don't want to fire him? He's so nice. I said, but he's not doing his job. And that's what happens to people when they don't do their job. So I agree with that. Really, we've got to let our kids, we've got to do that dignity of risk, and we've got to presume their competence and give them as many opportunities as we can within the safety of what we know about them. I mean, I do have a son with intellectual disability. He does need some protection. He might not run into traffic, but he may accidentally walk into traffic. So those are things that I'm not going to let go of, but I'm going to teach him every day how to be as safe as he can and as independent as he can. One of the lessons I learned the hardest, I think, was I mentioned that when he was transitioning out of his transition program into his day program, he had been so successful in high school and so successful in his transition program that I forgot how transitions can be so difficult for him. And so we did this 2-day-a-week thing, and he was doing great. And everybody's, oh, he's doing great. He's going to sail right into the 5 days a week. That did not happen. When we went from 2 to 5 days a week without the job coach from his transition program, we had a really rocky transition. And so my lesson learned is, as successful as he is and as capable as he is, when he's transitioning, everything changes. And I need to back up and say, we need to recognize this is a big transition and plan for it. And this is not just educationally, or residentially, wherever he's living. Those things that change for him are very big. And I need to bear that in mind, because he was doing his own morning routine completely independently. When he moved out of the house, he had to start all over again and start that same routine from scratch. And those are things that I forget because he presents so capably. So those are things to bear in mind, that, you know, they can be really great at things, but they may need help when things change.
We had a great question in the chat who they want more explanation about not taking the diploma. So I'm not sure if any of who wants to take it.
I actually responded in the chat.
Okay, wonderful.
But I could say something about it. It was a PBT decision about him needing transition services. They weren't really sure what that would look like at the time. So that's why I had came to the table with some program options. But it was hard for my son, even to, of course, because of COVID, they didn't have a traditional graduation. It was a drive-through graduation. Mm-hmm. But he kept saying, well, what's the point if I'm not getting my diploma? Because in his head, I'm done with high school, give me my diploma. He wanted it. He wanted to see it. He wanted to experience, like he was done. But of course, if we accept the diploma, then he wouldn't be able to continue with transition services. Right. So that took a lot of convincing and a lot of staff talking to him, saying that technically he is done with high school. He wouldn't be returning back to the high school, but it would allow him to continue to get supports. But he's still hoping to get that diploma. And I get it, right? That's like the stamp of I'm done, but it works for our family.
Laura, I don't know if you saw, but Pat Anderson left some great information in the chat for folks too.
Thank you, Pat. Yana, do you have any words of advice for families or individuals among the different stages of transition?
Just don't give up. Keep on fighting. It is going to be a fight. Getting adult services, getting those services at college, it can be a fight. It can be hard. It's a lot of phone calls, a lot of dead ends, but be persistent. Don't give up. Ask for help if you need it, and let your child shine. Don't clip their wings. And yeah, it's gonna be persistent. You gotta pick up that phone and call, because the waiting list for adult services is enormous. You gotta pick up the phone and call and remind people that you're there and be on it, because that's how things get done. A lot of the time, the reason I got service is because my mom and I were on it. She would call my case manager, she would call DDS every single day and say, is this getting done? Is this getting done? And yeah, they knew her very well at BRS, at DDS, and she got things done. And also have your child, if you're in high school, have your child start attending their PPTs so that they know how to advocate for themselves. They know what accommodations they're getting. That's going to be important in adult life, because for adult services, they have to go to their IP meeting, which is the planning meeting that they have at DDS and DSS, where they come up with the goals for the year. So it's important to start attending that PPT. I attended my first PPT when I was in 7th grade. And that was the first time I ever advocated for myself. And it felt good to know that a 12-year-old kid could advocate and be able to change the mind of all of the professionals and get them to listen to me.
Yes. That's amazing. That's wonderful. Does anybody have any questions? If you want to unmute yourself and ask a question.
I just want to add to the diploma. I keep seeing the questions coming up in the chat about taking the diploma.
Mm-hmm.
So walking at graduation, and I'm sure that if you speak with your school, your child can walk at graduation, but just that physical accepting the diploma is something that ends your relationship with the public school system, or ends your child's relationship with the public schools. So that's the delineation. So if there is transition services that are going to take place, you can still take part in those senior activities, but not accept the diploma. So I don't know if that actually makes any sense. Right, you cannot take the diploma or the certificate of completion, because then they are completely exited. I don't know if that helps to clarify some of the confusion that seems to be in the chat on that.
Hi, can I just piggyback on what you just said about the diploma? I'm a transition coordinator at at ACES, I'll just say ACES. We just had a meeting yesterday and we decided exactly how we're gonna handle this problem. Here, I'll start my video too, just so you can see who I am. Sorry. Anyway, we just had a meeting yesterday, and what we decided, what we're doing with our students who are walking but not leaving till age 22, we came up with this wording. I'm just going to share it in case other people are looking for something. Just so we can have something to hand them, so they're not just walking and like just not getting anything. This certificate acknowledges and celebrates your continued growth and progress at Whitney Academy Create. And that's what they'll be getting. And we'll put it in a different kind of holder. You know, the other ones will get the diploma holder and jacket, and they'll get just like a little thing. And then this way they have it until they leave. They have something.
Our school system actually gave all of the students the same jacket. They're all empty. Every student needs to go up to a particular classroom to get their diploma after the graduation ceremony. So it doesn't make any difference. Everyone's getting the same thing when they walk across. So if you still need to go to summer school, for example, to finish that English class that you may have failed, you're not physically going upstairs to get your diploma just yet. If you're going on to transition, it's the same thing. So we will actually collect the physical diploma this summer, or this spring, but he got the jacket at graduation just like everyone else did, which I thought
I gave that jacket to my students, and some of them are not leaving till December. By the time they wouldn't even know where that jacket is. We just came up with a little, it's very simple that we're just putting it in, and the jacket they'll get on their last day of school. We're going to do a little celebration, hand them the diploma or certificate in the jacket.
Yeah, my son's school, because he really wanted something to be given to him, they did create like a little certificate to kind of appeal to him, because he was adamant that he could not walk, well, the drive-through, because he wasn't getting a diploma. So I appreciated that they put outside the box and gave him that little certificate.
Mm-hmm. It makes sense. Absolutely. I just saw something in the chat about the diploma jacket or something like that. All our students that are in our ceremony are all special ed students that, we don't have regular ed students at our school. So they're all getting similar things. They're all, it's the same.
Right.
Great. Well, it is just about 1 o'clock. I want to thank CPAC and everybody here on this panel. Just sharing your experiences has been amazing. We've had some great chats going, and some other questions that I know we may not have had time to answer, but we will be able to send those questions to the panelists, and we will post those on our website next week. Just wanted to say thank you again to everyone for sticking with us through the entire day virtually, and hope you enjoyed the conference sessions this morning and this panel this afternoon. This could not all be possible without all of our presenters and our team at the center. So thank you all very, very much.
I just sent the link to the DDS self-advocacy if you're interested in having your child attend any of our groups. It's for ages 18 and up. They're all over the state. So there's a link for the DDS website for that.
Thank you. And I'm also posting in the chat our conference feedback form. Please take some time and give us some feedback on the conference and let us help planning for the next one. Okay.
And I did put CPAC's number in the chat, so call us with any questions, please.
Great. Thank you all so, so much. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.